Saw an old man in a veteran's hat at the service station pumping his gas. Pulled up beside him, blaring B-side Merle. He said there's still some good in this world.
Hey guys, and welcome to Tilling It Like It Is. This is Savannah, one of your hosts, and I do not have Blake with me today. But that being said, we've got a really good treat for you guys. We have Dr. Lisa Baxter and Shanna Reynolds with us today. I'm going to talk a little bit about forages. There's a couple of things that both or all of us have dealt with in recent months, and those are armyworms and stem maggots. So, Shanna, Lisa, any comments on those in your part of the state? Fun fact: we just found it in our found armyworms in our crabgrass field yesterday. So, we're getting out today, but it's raining, so they're just gonna eat it, I guess. So any
Yeah,
comments on the stem maggots or armyworms?
yeah, we've definitely got them up here now. I found them a couple weeks ago, but it was just on my TEF research plot that evidently they really love. Lucky me. But I hadn't heard a lot from my farmers yet. But this past week, I started getting some calls and seeing some social media posts with people saying their lawns had brown spots, and so I'm spending this week doing some scouting and letting people know to go ahead and see what kind of chemicals our local feed stores have in stock, get some plans in order. After last year, we certainly don't want a repeat, or if we have a repeat, we don't want to be unprepared for it.
Yeah, so we had our kind of statewide agent update last week, and I think we had about 18 people on there, 18 to 20, and everybody did say, I've heard of the fall armyworm, if not in their county, kind of in their region. But the consensus is that it felt manageable this year, whereas last year, just everything related to the fall armyworm felt out of our control. Unfortunately, we just couldn't get ahead of it. Most of the calls that were starting seem to be on like home gardens and lawns. Of course, we're a little, more in tune with what's happening there. You notice when they pick out your prized tomato that you were trying to sort of save for the fair or something. But yeah, the fall armyworm is out there. It's sporadic, but again, it seems like it's feeling manageable for everyone. The stem maggots, the one that I've had more complaints about this year than previous.
Well, I think from an Emmanuel County standpoint, we got them earlier than we typically do for one. But for two, it seems like we're seeing a little more infestation across the county than we usually do as well. And in fact, even in some TIFT 85 fields, which is not super uncommon, but a lot of times we see them in our coastal more than the TIFT 85.
Yeah, so we just published that graphic, I think it was into last week on the Georgia Forage Facebook page to explain kind of why most producers are frustrated with the Bermuda stem maggot this year compared to previous years. And the way the call keeps coming into me is, oh no, the pyrethroids don't work anymore. And that's not the case. They do work and they work quite well. But we've got some things working against us this year. I mean, this is a rainy week, so as much as you want to spray, it's not going to happen. But we just came out of, I think every one of us was in a major or to extreme heat advisory last week. And that led to a lot of producers mistiming those applications, unfortunately. We don't really know where the fly goes after it gets that hot in the day, but they go somewhere, and that's not where that pyrethroid's being sprayed, unfortunately. So that's just led to a lot of just frustrations. By producers this year. And it's not just our state. I've had many a call from outside of Georgia that people think we're just sending them out their way. But no, we've just had some weather struggles this year.
So
For
Lisa,
sure.
you mentioned the heat. I know with our herbicide applications, we have to educate producers oftentimes that some of those herbicides, if you spray those this time of year, it's over 90 degrees, you'll actually damage your grasses that you normally would not damage with that herbicide. Do we see some of the same problems with insecticides, or it's just a timing issue because of the heat?
So I think in theory, any chemical stands that chance if you get hot enough and the plant's stressed enough. But the concern that you're talking about is definitely more on the herbicide side because the plants are having to like take those chemicals in. And so they're just more vulnerable to the injury at that point. Whereas the insecticide that we spray for the Bermuda stem maggot and a lot of them that we spray for the fall armyworm are contact insecticides, so they're not actually being moved into that plant in any way. So the bigger issue is that when we're under those heat domes, we heat up so fast in the morning and the dew dries earlier. So the Bermuda stem maggot flies are going somewhere, not where we're spraying. And unfortunately, since those products have no residual, when they come back later that night or the next morning, that insecticide's already kind of dissipated. It's gone. It's worked. And unfortunately, the fly wasn't there to literally come in contact with it when it was most effective.
So we want to be spraying those early in the morning when we've got severe heat like that.
Early in the morning. And, I practice what I preach there. I was spraying at 5 a.m. during the last two heat domes. So we, got the chemical ready the night before so that I could come rolling in with my cup of coffee at 5 a.m. and start spraying in the pitch black because with between where I fill up and the number of acres that I have to spray, that was the only way to get done by 8 a.m. And so, yeah, it's not fun. It's not ideal. But if it's the difference in having a hay crop and not having a hay crop, I can lose an hour of sleep.
So another thing that I kind of feel like everything has snuck up on us this year. We've gotten back so busy, at least I have, with everything, and it just seems like I'm rolling from one day to the next to the next to the next without being quite as prepared as I usually like to be, just because everything is happening so quick. And so it really doesn't matter, if it's stem maggots that catch up on you or armyworms that catch up on you. One thing that we really need to be thinking about and planning for going into August is fall forages. And I know it seems early, especially considering last year. I know a lot of our fall forages didn't get planted until January, or winter forages. But anyway, so that's something we needed to be thinking about. So, what are some things that we need to be looking at as far as getting ready goes in the early part? Yes, well, today, the day we're filming, it's like 70 degrees and it's wonderful, but at the same time, yes, it's August, but yes, we need to be planning for those forages. So what do we need to be looking at going into August for our fall and winter forages?
I'll say one thing that's it's kind of probably obvious, but I love seed shopping this time of year when I'm getting ready for fall forage. I guess most women like shoes. Us girls, we like seed shopping, but um, we forget sometimes that the seed is not guaranteed to be on the shelf. And so don't wait till you're ready to plant to figure out what you're going to plant is kind of a tip that I would give people. Some of these weather challenges that we've had, they prevent seed production too. They don't just impact our forage crops. So I just say get out there, have fun doing your seed shopping, and don't wait till the last minute on that.
And one thing I think we get caught up in regard as for seed is we plant the same thing every single year. And we don't look at the other options that we have. And even on our farm, Daddy reaches out to the row crop farmers and we get the wheat and the rye that had the most ryegrass in it, and that's what we plant. But UGA has a lot of resources on some of the more improved forage varieties and how they perform across the state. So, Lisa, I guess that might be a good segue to talk about maybe some of those variety trials that we do conduct.
Yeah, so all of our winter forage recommendations for the small grains and the ryegrass come from statewide variety test results that have 5 or 6 different locations depending on the species. So it's not just Georgia, we also extend into Florida and west into Alabama. So if you go to the Georgia Forage's website right now, those are actually the updated variety list for this year. And so we pick the top third to top half, depending on the species of what's submitted to list as our top varieties for the year. I echo what Shauna said. I haven't heard of seed shortages for winter forages yet, but we had a lot of them for summer forages. So in my mind, we're even if there's not a seed shortage, everybody's probably going to be really amped up, ready to go buying those winter forages. So there may be an unknown demand that the seed supply just can't immediately respond to. So definitely get out there, shop early. Get that seed locked down as early as you can. So if we have this lovely weather that persists, hopefully we can get that seed in as soon as we can.
One thing I do want to point out while we are talking about seed is we do have a lot of producers, especially in Emmanuel County, but in surrounding counties where the row crop producers do actually have that seed. And our guys here in Emmanuel County actually have it cleaned. Some of them have it bagged, some of them sell it in bulk, but it's usually pretty good in regard to the weed stands and weed counts and stuff like that. It's usually they always send off the samples, so we have those tags. But those are always an option if you do have trouble finding more of your certified seed. The other question is, obviously the soil is always our basis of forage or any agricultural product, but coming out of a summer system and maybe we're overseeding maybe our Bahia, our Bermuda grass pastures, or maybe we're coming in and fitting to cut out our sorghums or millets or whatever we planted. What should we be looking at from a soil standpoint going into the fall?
Yeah. Shayna, do you want to take that one or do you want me to?
You can go ahead. I mean, I just would, remind people the basics of if you don't have to do it fall, if you want to do it spring, but you need to be doing it about the same time of year. You need to have those soil tests on your calendar. Really, if it's something more input heavy, like if you're deciding to try your hand with some alfalfa this fall or something like that, you're going to have to do multiple soil tests. So get with an agent or specialist to talk through that. But just the fact that you're going ahead and getting those soil tests run, being prepared to figure out what you need to do. On our grazing systems, we want to do those at least every 3 years. And then in our hay fields, we recommend that annually. I'll let you go more into depth on what we need, where we need that soil to be.
Yeah, so for the most part, our winter forages are pretty tolerant to a lot of mismanagement on the soil side. They're pretty forgiving, especially if you go with something like cereal rye. As long as you got some good drainage, it's usually pretty happy. But what's not very forgiving are those legumes that people like to throw in there. Definitely make sure your soil pH is up near neutral before you spend that money on that legume seed. Um, I'd hate to spend money on something that doesn't stand a chance of coming up if we've got a pH down close to 5. So do be aware of things like that with respect to soil. Um, the other thing is kind of how I end up answering this question a lot of times is that we are using those winter crops, one, to extend the grazing season. That's how we've generally talked about them. But two, we've got a lot of people doing perennial forage renovation plans right now, or switching row crops into perennial forage systems. So as you're doing that soil prep for that winter forage, this may be one of the last opportunities you have to incorporate nutrients or incorporate lime. So take advantage of this opportunity while we have bare ground there, and include that in your soil prep. Once you get that soil test, it's not going to change immediately. So let's take advantage of that opportunity while we have annual ground to get those nutrients down, to that 6 to 8 inch mark if we can.
This is switching gears just a little bit, but going into the fall, we have a hayfield that we've been battling Johnson grass for years and years and years. And now, mind you, we haven't really been fighting very hard. But that being said, we are looking at spraying it. And my understanding is this time of year for some of these perennial grasses is the best time to try to get that out there. So can you talk a little bit about maybe some Vasey grass or Johnson grass control in that regard?
Yeah, for the most part, any of those weeds that are really annoying to you all summer that herbicides just don't seem to work very good on, it's because going into kind of mid to late August, early September is the better time to spray. So with a lot of those, we know the product. I mean, you can Google UGA extension, whatever weed, and you're gonna get an answer, but we really have missed the mark overall on the timing of those applications. So we've got the right product, but if it's sprayed 2 months early, you made yourself feel better there in that moment, but that weed just laughed at you and grew bigger. So it's usually those weeds that have either rhizomes or just really dense, deep root systems that almost mimic rhizomes. So your Johnson grass, your Vasey grass, knotroot, foxtail, even things like horse nettle. We don't think of being rhizomatous, but it is. So all those just really pesky weeds, especially ones that your pre-emergent probably didn't catch. Now's the time that we need to be looking to treat those.
Good. And I missed the mark on this, so we're going to bounce back to winter forages. Shanna, our winter forage stuff is pretty simple for cows. You've got your oats, ryegrass, wheat, a couple of legumes, maybe some clover in there or something of that nature. How does that differ for small ruminants?
Honestly, it doesn't differ much. There's things, that your herd will have to be trained to eat, just like with cattle. If you want to use some of the brassicas like rape, all that stuff works fine. They're just going to be picky about it. Small ruminants are notorious for being very selective grazers. So you may have to really limit the area you give them at a time and kind of force them to try some things. But as far as what will work, we have a small goat herd and we plant all the things. If I want to try something out just to see how my cattle producers I work with might like it, I'll put it in the goat field. So we do oats, rye, wheat, ryegrasses, triticales, all the brassicas, clovers, vetch, really the same types of things that you guys are doing in the cattle fields. We're doing the same with the small ruminants. Love lately the like the daikon radish to help build that soil. And I've only done that actually it's 1 or 2 years. I think just 1 year. And I haven't figured out how to get my goats to eat the radish yet. They'll eat the tops, but they leave the radish. I figure either way it's fine, but I know that the cattle, they'll pull that up and eat the whole radish, and that's a great nutrition source for them. So
But it's also really nice on some of those brassicas, like the radish, like the rape and things. We find that it helps break a soil pan. I mean, a hard pan in that soil in some capacity. So that's always a nice thing. That being said, my daddy really likes the brassicas too because he can come in and boil them and cook them. So I get tickled at him. He's like, I got a whole little garden patch out there. So we plant some now for the cows, and then he gets to collect his own share.
I do the same. Tell your dad that I'm feeling. My goats will pull up the whole turnip and eat the top and leave the beautiful turnip just laying there. So I go out there in the afternoons and pick them up and walk them off.
So
So to connect that to research for you all, not my current students, but many a previous one have liked to eat the research samples as snacks. So when we have samples in the fridge for separations later, I have to put do not eat on those, or you're going to alter my numbers. So it is a common occurrence.
Hey, it's all about efficiency and sustainability, right? So also going into the winter and the fall when we're developing feed plans and forage plans for our livestock, I always say I'm very blunt in this situation. But I as a cattle producer myself, but also as a county extension agent and somebody that understands and dabbles in cattle nutrition a good bit, I wholeheartedly believe if you're not planting winter forages and managing them well, that you're not doing the one of the most economically feasible things that you can to feed your cows or your sheep and goats in the winter. Nutritionally speaking, for sure, but also, we can't. The average hay samples are just absolutely not enough to feed lactating mama cows. They're just, I pulled a sample of Tiff Quick Bahia grass. So this is a anomaly, I think, that I don't ever see them this high. But this Tiff Quick, the RFQ on it was a 141, and that is just wild coming from a Bahia grass sample. But it is the only sample that I've sent off in 2 years that for two different counties that would cover a mama cow that is lactating in the winter months. And so I say that to say and to emphasize that yes, it's August. Right now it feels like fall, but last week, if you weren't careful, you were dehydrated and laying on the ground because it was 125 degrees outside. But that being said, we need to be thinking about going into the winter, planning our feeds, planning our forages. And that being said, I think one of the most important components of that, outside of planning your winter forages and getting it prepared, your land prepared to do that, is to send off hay samples. So we need to be doing that, which brings up the point, Lisa, that our Southeastern Hay Contest samples, when are those due?
So those samples need to be postmarked by August 30th. And do be aware that that is butted up right against Labor Day weekend. So depending on where you are, the post office are going to be very firm in their close time on August 30th this year. So do be aware of that. All the entry information is online. We require sign off by a county extension agent. So definitely anybody listening, contact your agent sooner rather than later to make sure that sample gets to the post office and signed off on in time.
So that's always a really good contest to be a part of if you're growing hay, whether you're growing it to be contest winners or you're just growing it and you find that you have a really good sample, and would like to submit it. But outside of the contest, we cannot develop forage plans without knowing what you're feeding from a base setting. And so, ideally, we would like to get down to a 65 to 80 day feeding window. I don't know that it's really realistic to do that as far as hay goes too terribly much. Just depends on the year. But again, sending off those samples, they're only $20 through our offices plus shipping. So you may go to a different county and it may be a little more, but we do have to charge shipping in those. But $20 to $30 to send off a sample to know exactly what you're feeding is worth it every time. But that being said, Shanna, Lisa, anything else that you guys have from a forage perspective?
I'd say
No,
with
it's a
just test them all. That's why I'm telling my guys. For some reason, well, I can't say for some reason, I understand it. They don't want to send off something they think might be junk. Like it's going to be a representation of how they put up all their hay if one sample comes back not looking so hot. I tell people just to not worry about that. Nobody's looking at the samples that didn't win the contest. They're only looking at the results for the winners. And so you get the information either way. If you're gonna, you need to sample. If you're gonna sample, you might as well put them all in the contest because you'd be surprised when you have a sample that's better than you thought it was gonna be.
Yeah, so I'd say the message that I've had to give a lot of people over the last couple weeks is, I mean, things are changing fast. It's in August, so we're either in a heat dome or I'm in a hoodie, and we're gonna sit here and flop back and forth. And it's a great time to do a lot of testing. It's a great time to do seed shopping and just get ready for winter. You talked earlier, Savannah, about always feeling like we're 2 steps behind. Let's use this opportunity to get some things on the calendar and get ahead.
Shanna, Lisa, thank you guys for being with us. Thank you for your expertise. And I, for one, just adore working with you guys. You are awesome, and a pleasure to work with on all of the forage crop systems and problems that we face. And so thank you guys again for being on Tilling It Like It Is. But we are going to transition into some upcoming events. On August the 21st, we have a small farm irrigation workshop in Louisville. And so that's with the Jefferson County Extension Office. Small farms, uh, pecan producers, vegetable producers, maybe fruit tree producers, any of your smaller producers or even very serious gardeners would be interested in attending this. On August the 26th, we do have a fall gardening workshop in Emmanuel County. Also on August the 26th, there's a small ruminant workshop and FAMACHA training down in Effingham County with Blake. August the 27th, we have the Southeast Georgia Pecan Field Day in Reedsville. And then on September the 16th, that will start this year's Master Cattlemen's Program that is in Warren County. Now, I do want to point out that all of these events require pre-registration. So please contact the county extension agents in those particular counties and we can get you set up. But that being said, thank you for joining us and remember to just keep tilling it like it is. Thank you.
Saw an old man in a veteran's hat at the service station pumping his gas. Pulled up beside him, blaring beside Merle. He said there's still some good in this world.